Monica Minott is the author of 2 collections of poetry, and she's with us here just now. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing good. I'm here in the UK. I'm
Yeah.
working hard at my third book.
Oh, nice. So, how would you describe your poetry? Does it have a particular style to it?
I would say my poetry is very engaging with respect to history, with landscaping, with personal and family history, with music and art, in particular art of Jean-Michel Basquiat, because I'm really focused on expressive poetry at this time.
Yeah. And are there things in your life that inspire you to write about certain things?
Well, first of all, I am very passionate about injustices.
Yeah.
And the world, as you know, is a place that is really full of injustice. So let's look at what's happening in our world today. We can look at the United States, and we know what is happening. The Black Lives Matter movement has really mushroomed, and the reason for it is because persons have been really disenfranchised for many, many, many years. And it culminated in the several murders of Black men on the streets in the United States.
Yeah.
And of course, there is also the kickback from that as well. We look at the United Kingdom, where we are today, and we see that the Windrush generation who came by the invitation of the crown at the time, post-colonial time, they were being sent back a few years ago. They're no longer welcomed here after they have spent 50 or 60 years here. So how could they then go, where is home? So the question really is, where is home for the Windrush generation? Having toiled in the snow and the cold for 60 years, where is home?
Yeah.
So these are some of the things that inspire me.
Yeah.
Back home in Jamaica, there are injustices as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's a matriarchal society, yet still women are really not at the top helm of most companies. We as women are disenfranchised. We don't mind sharing the spotlight, but if we do a lot of the work, then we should get some of the praise.
Yeah.
So injustices, run the gamut in this world. And my hope is that my poetry is not just to be critical, but to inspire change, to inspire hope, to make sure that persons who are reading will internalize some of the pain I'm feeling and will do something about it.
Yeah.
That poetry will inspire change.
And do you feel like these injustices have improved over the years, or is it still just as bad as it used to be?
Well, I think, as you know, it continues. It continues. Whether to say it is worse, injustices are now worse than it was before, I would not like to focus on that. I just know injustices remain at an unacceptable level, and that we, the today's generation, we have the opportunity to heal. My poetry is about healing, about recognizing the problem, but also saying there is a pathway to healing. There is some acceptance that nobody is perfect and that we can move on. I look at babies when at 1 year old or 2 years old, and whether they're black, white, yellow, or brown, they love and hug each other.
Yeah.
As soon as they reach 5 or 7 or 10, there is some social distancing already. And therefore it tells you that hate is a learned institution.
Yeah.
So we as adults need to promote love, acceptance, tolerance, diversity.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And in terms of your poems, do you feel it has a particular style, as in some poems rhyme, others are more kind of descriptive or kind of acrostic? Do you feel like yours is a kind of category of poem?
I would say that my poetry, it has grown and been modified over time.
Yeah.
But I do write stylistic poems that are free verse. That's how I started. But as I have got more formal education with respect to poetry, I have found myself adopting some of the master's methods, and exposure, like everything else, seeps into your blood and seeps into your work. And you decide it's not just seeping in. Like right now, I've started writing sonnet, but I'm not writing sonnet just as the masters did. I'm not writing as Shakespeare did. I'm writing in a new way. I'm actually using the form of this sonnet to be a criticism of the old master's work, but at the same time, a criticism of the things that are happening in the world today. But yet still, I'm still writing 14 lines. I'm still having rhymes. I'm still doing some of the traditional, but it's not exactly the same. So it's also a way of deconstructing what was acceptable, what is acceptable as language, as sentences, as structure.
And what do you think actually makes a poem rather than just being a collection of words or a story or just a kind of general description? What makes a poem actually classed as a poem?
Well, that's a very good question. I've heard it before.
Yeah.
But a poem is definitely more than a group of words, because poem must have, and I'm going to give you a very good illustration that I learned from one of my masters back home in Jamaica. He loaned me a Robert Frost book, and he said, read this book. This was Professor Mervyn Morris. He said, read this book. And if you read this book and you're still interested in the best thing that I got out of the book is that if you have a glass of water, it takes the form of the glass. Now, if you just break that glass, the water spills and it runs everywhere, and the value of the water is lost. A poem is much like that. It has to be contained. It must have structure, it must have rhythm, it must have voice, and it must have style. So that glass, all of those features that I just mentioned actually come together to make a poem a poem. So I think that's a real good way of illustrating what a poem should be.
Yes.
I mean, you can go into other complexities, but for this program, I think that is adequate.
Yeah, it's good. Always have good analogies. That helps people understand things.
Yes, it's important.
Yeah. So what made you actually want to get into poetry in the first place then?
Well, that also is a story. I started writing poetry from I'm in high school, and I actually got one or two of them published from I'm in high school.
Ooh.
But after I left high school and I went to college, I switched my discipline totally, and I went into the business stream. So I became a chartered accountant eventually, and I did a lot of corporate law. But I took the business stream, and I have a practice as a chartered accountant for many, many years. However, one day, a pastor actually came into my office to do business with me and asked me what is my passion and what is the thing that I really love the most to do. And I said, I think it's my business. And he said, oh, go home and think about it. What is your talent? So I thought about it, and he, what this passion does is you do it even if somebody is not paying you. No, I wouldn't do my business day-to-day work if somebody is not paying me. So I know that it excluded that. So here it was. The one thing my go-to is my writing and my poetry. So then I became more interested in it, and I went back to the old books and to just finding out, is this really my talent? And this is where it has led to today. I now have 2 books, and I'm writing my 3rd.
Nice. And what is it that you like so much about poetry as opposed to, you could have written a novel or something? What do you like about writing poems? Well,
as I said, there's just a passion that I have for poetry, and it is the shape of it's something you can say in a page or 10 pages, and it summarizes all your interests and your passion, and it gets to the point quickly. I'm not saying it is better or worse than a novel. I'm just saying, for me, that's what brought me here. But I'm definitely also interested in writing other genres. I intend to write a novel. So I'm saying I'm open to all other way and methods of writing.
Yeah. And how do you actually go about writing one? Do you kind of focus on it at the time, or is it really kind of easy for you and just comes naturally? Because I suppose poetry is maybe just one of those things that it's easier to write than a book.
I would say poetry is not easy to write,
Yeah.
but for me, I think I have my interest and my writing points, because you know, it is that some persons will decide that they're going to sit down and they're going to write about a bottle
Yeah.
or a lover or whatever the topic is. But my poetic prompts are usually from something that happens in life, and it lights up in my mind.
Yeah.
It's like a light bulb going on, and I have to put pen to paper. Some persons say it's a gift. Some persons say that I am really just so excited about writing that I will always write.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, a light bulb goes off into my head and I put pen to paper. So that's how it is for me.
Yeah. And have you ever suffered from any kind of writer's block where you aren't feeling like doing any poetry?
I would not call it writer's block for me. I would just say I sometimes take the time to just step back from what I'm doing, step back from the poetry. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes it is longer, a month. And sometimes I am consumed by something else. But when I'm consumed by like work, when I'm in Jamaica,
Yeah.
I sometimes will get up at 12 o'clock in the night and write poetry.
Wow.
So it always finds an outlet. But I can be away from it from a week, a month, but never a year.
Yes.
So a good way, if you want me to read one of my verses. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah, feel free to go ahead.
Okay. So this one is Dance Hall Museum, and I was in the midst of a group of dancers. We have different type of dancers, and this is dance hall. I don't know if you know dance hall. As a youngster, maybe you know a little bit about dance hall.
Is it? Oh.
But it is growing up. My mother, for instance, would not want me to be associated with dance hall because dance hall was more suggestive, sexually suggestive. Dance hall is that you get really low down with the wines and the gyrations. But what I realized as I'm looking at it through a poetic eye is that it's part of the history of pain and suffering that is being released by the bodies through dancehall. And I was actually here looking at writing prompts at the museum, the Royal Museum. And I looked at ships, I looked at slaves that got raped. I looked at women who were really treated very badly. And I realized that there is an association between what was and what is. And then I now think of these great dancers that have come out of the ghettos of Kingston. And I realize that they're responding to history. The history, they say, that travels in our DNA, in our bodies. There is no scientific fact that history travels through our DNA.
Yeah.
So here is this poem, Dancehall Museum, that I'm linking the past with the present. And it also captures the history of slavery and the pain women suffered having traveled through the Middle Passage and deposited in a strange land, which is now our home. My body is never still. There is no deception in movement. It is a call and a response. Archiving of oppression. No food to eat deep in the ghettos. This is where I come to set my troubles down. On a dance floor, on a pavement, on any table strong enough to hold the weight of memories. My body is never still. There is no deception. One with a drum beat. I am like burning coal in the backyard furnace, red with blood memories. This is where I come to lay my troubles out. In the spirit of dancehall, a whine, a twist, a juke, body loud, cease and settle. I have rhythm out of the bowels of the deep, deep ghettos. Agile, born ready bodies gyrate, releasing words, prescriptions, articulating my identity. We never repeat stories once told. Break down, reconstruct, hip spinning in circles, punctuated words falling from my lips before they hit ground. Words take the shape of my spine and are sex. Spirit of dancehall alive in the wine, twist and joke. We belong. In community, no defeat. Resistance, resistance. This is my body, a top-notch museum. So
Lovely.
that's a good example of one of my poems.
Yes. Bravo.
Yeah, so it is out of matching circumstances that a poem like this
Yeah.
comes to me. And when it comes to me like this, it comes whole.
Yes, for sure. Do you make any money from your poetry, or is it definitely more of a hobby thing?
Well, it's definitely not a hobby. I have made a little money. I have books out, and I have earned from my books.
Yeah.
I also have got paid to come to different functions to read my poetry.
Ooh.
So it is more than a hobby, definitely
Yeah.
at this point in time.
Yeah, definitely. And when you're not writing poems, do you get up to any other exciting hobbies?
Well, right now I am not. I love music.
Yeah.
I love music. I listen to music. In a few years back, I would be playing games. I also do a little swimming when I'm back home in Jamaica. I do swimming on a Saturday morning.
Ooh.
But the only thing is here that I've been here for the last year and a half. Of course, the place is so cold and there's no heated pool, so there's nowhere to swim.
Yep.
But I suppose I'll figure my way around a little bit more and find out where I can swim as well.
Yeah.
But definitely, I'm interested. I have other interests. I still read a lot outside of poetry,
Yeah.
and I would say I love a good party now and again.
Oh, yeah.
Not often. I still can enjoy the party scene, and definitely I also, because of I'm here for the year and a half I'm here, I'm in lockdown, but I
Yeah.
do love the Lord. I'm a Christian,
Yeah.
and I'm very involved back home in my church fellowship.
Oh, yes, of course. Well, if we're interested in checking out your books and poems and everything, where are we able to find them?
Well, People Tree Press is the publisher, and they're here in the UK. So if you
Nice.
go on Google and put in People Tree Press, you'll definitely be able to pick up the books. Coming Up Queen, the first collection, is on Amazon. And I'm told by People Tree in another month or so, the second collection will also be available on Amazon. But for now, you can just put in People Tree Press and click and look for Zion Roses, Monica Minott, and you'll get a copy of my book.
Yeah.
So looking forward to persons getting back to me that they've bought the book and give me their response.
Yeah, nice.
I'm also available if they want to link with me. They can always go to my Twitter handle, which is Mint99WM. And I'm also on Facebook.
Yes.
So like my Facebook page, send me a message on Twitter.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today then.
And thank you for having me. You're such a gracious host. I enjoyed myself with you today.